Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a wonderful Saturday, and as we already mentioned, we are going to show at least one more game from round 6 of the 2019 Tata Steel Chess Tournament. It's a game between Polish Grandmaster Jan-Krzysztof Duda and Dutch Grandmaster Anish Giri. As you all know, Anish Giri won first place last year in the Tata Steel, but he was tied with Magnus Carlsen. They had to go into tiebreaks, and then Magnus Carlsen won in tiebreaks. As in tiebreaks there are faster time controls, and it's always very difficult to play against Magnus Carlsen in faster time controls, as everyone always is reminded of that. Karakin got reminded of that after he, got through the classical time formats in his 2016 World Chess Championship match against Carlsen, and then Carlsen defeated him in the Rapids. Caruana also saw this after drawing 12 games against Carlsen and then losing to him in faster time controls. And Giri saw it in last year's Tata Steel tournament, where again he finished first, tied with Carlsen, and he had to play against him in faster time controls. So here, Anish Giri has the black pieces, and after losing that first game to Jan Nepomniachtchi, I always mess that up, but I will just call him Nepo until I master that. After he blundered a piece in round 1, he had a perfect tournament afterwards, and here again he plays a very interesting game with the black pieces. Or should I say Jan-Krzysztof Duda plays a very interesting game with the white pieces, but I'll let you decide on who played an interesting game here. So Duda opens with e4, we have e5, knight f3, knight c6, and here we have g3. Definitely not a move you see every day in top-tier tournaments. It's the Konstantinopolski opening introduced by Alexander Konstantinopolski in 1956 game against Vyacheslav Rogozin. I mean, of course, it can be used as a surprise. I don't think I've seen this move ever in top-tier tournaments. But okay, Giri goes knight to f6, we have d3, g6, and bishop to g2, preparing the castle. Giri also prepares the castle, and here there are a few moves known in the database. Knight c3 is a known move, bishop g5 is a known move, castling is a known move, but c4 is a new move. And already on move 6 we have a completely new game. So obviously Duda prepared something devious for Giri this game. We have d6, simply strengthening the center here, and as you can see, c4 and e5 create a very strong outpost on d5, but on the other hand creates a hole on d4. So it's a trade-off as usual when you leave your for example, backwards d3 pawn weak like this. h3, we have castles by Giri, knight to c3, and now knight to d7. Already, this is not your everyday opening, and well, you have to immediately start thinking, and which is not very often the case in top-tier tournaments. Usually you will maybe even play 20 moves before you have to go out of safety waters of opening theory knowledge. Here Giri wants to bust open the position with f5. We have bishop to g5 attacking Giri's queen, and now first f6. We have bishop back to e3, and now f5. And now, although you could play bishop to g5 once again, hoping to repeat a position, I mean, you're playing the white pieces, of course, you don't want to repeat positions, and it's definitely Duda who is more prepared this game, as he prepared this Konstantinopolski opening for Giri. For example, if bishop f6, then bishop h6, but black can even ignore you and play f captures on e4. And now you cannot capture the rook because of capturing here, for example, captures, and now you will lose one of the bishops here. After bishop captures, queen captures, you will win black will win 2 pieces for the rook, which is definitely in white's favor. So after f5, we have e captures on f5, and now g captures on f5. Giri allows his pawn structure on the king side to be ruined, but as a reward he will have a very nice control of the center here and of the king side, and he will be able to create an attack on the king side. Queen d2, hoping to exchange bishops via bishop to h6, and now comes knight to c5. Giri is preparing to bring this knight over to e6, and then he will have excellent control of d4, but also he will prepare f4. We have castles by Duda, and now knight to e6. Knight to d5, and now Giri waits no longer. He plays f4, and it's a very nice idea. G captures on f4, and now not recapturing, but rather knight c to d4, and here you do have to capture with the bishop, because if you capture with the knight, then it's a bit of a problem. For example, if knight captures, e captures, then your bishop on e3 is trapped. And while you can free it, for example, with f5, it's a very complicated idea, but it doesn't work in the end, because here after pawn captures, this is not the best way to continue for black. After white recaptures, white will actually have a very strong center and a very strong initiative. Now the pawn on f5 is protected, and black will still have to struggle here. So instead of capturing on e3, black will just capture on f5, and now black is just better. Your bishop is still under attack. For example, if bishop h6, now c6, attacking the knight cannot retreat to e3 or f4, so knight has to go to b4, and now after queen h4, black will simply have a deadly attack. For example, bishop captures, black can ignore him, knight f4, the attack is coming. After f3, you can go queen g3, threaten knight captures on h3. After king h1, you can go rook h5, and now you're just threatening everything. Bishop captures on h3 is a big threat. If queen f2, you can simply grab the bishop back. After rook g1, now you can just capture here. Bishop captures, rook captures with check. You have to block with the queen, you lose the queen, and then black will not lose his queen, as knight g6 simply stops everything. So a very dangerous position here after knight c to d4 by Giri. So Duda decides to capture with the bishop. We have bishop captures, e captures on d4, and now queen to a5. Giri says, okay, that's a weird move, go back with the queen. He plays b6, and indeed Duda does go back with the queen. We have c6, pressuring the knight, and now it's a bit of a problem here. If you go knight b4, which is definitely an option, then comes knight captures on f4, and black's attack will be too strong. For example, knight captures on c6, queen f6. Now you can go queen g6, you can capture on h3. Everything is an idea here. Black will just have an unstoppable attack. One of the possibilities after c6 is again this f5 move, which leads to a very interesting position. Of course, if black captures here, then you will capture on e6, but if rook captures, then you can go queen e4, attack the rook, and now after rook to f7, you can go knight b4, save your knight, but still black will go bishop d7, and after knight captures on c6, queen f8, and black's attack will still be happening much faster than white's, and it's just a better position. So Duda decides to go for a different idea, not moving the knight, not pushing f5, but rather knight g5. And indeed, if you decide to capture the pawn here, then you get the knight captures here, bishop captures, queen captures on e6 with check, king moves, and now bishop captures on d5, equalizes in material, but white's position will be better here. So Giri decides to defend instead. After knight g5, we have rook e8 defending, and now what do you play here? If you capture on e6, then rook captures on e6, you have to move the queen, rook g6, again black's attack is happening much faster. On the other hand, after rook to e8, if you try something like knight b4, again retreating with the knight, again knight captures on f4 will be a much faster attack for black. Knight captures, queen d7, and now your queen is under attack, the knight is under attack, this bishop, knight captures bishop followed by queen captures on h3 is an idea. But still, if queen c1, simply knight captures, king captures, and queen captures here will be winning for black. After king g1, bishop b7, you have this very nice diagonal here, just a crushing position for black, and even black is up a piece. So after rook e8, we have queen to d1, getting the queen out of this nasty rook's e-file, and now still not capturing here. If you capture here, then white's idea is still very interesting. After bishop captures, you pin the knight, and there's a double attack on the knight, but also queen g4, queen g5 is queen h5 is an idea. Let's say if you try something like queen to f6, then you get rook to e1, a triple attack against the knight on e6. And now, let's say if something like h6, you can go queen to h5, attack the rook that is undefended here, and then after bishop b7, after you connect rooks, you get rook captures on e6. Rook captures, knight captures, and now after bishop captures here, you will get queen captures, attacking the rook, but also threatening all sorts of nasty discoveries. After rook b8, you will get king to h2, preparing rook to g1, and after black also unpins, rook to g1 is coming. White's moves for attack are simply coming too natural. Rook g8, and then, for example, you can go queen captures on d6 or whatever, and whatever move black makes, it's very hard for black to make a move. Let's say you try here, then white can even just capture. Rook captures on g7, rook captures, and now knight f8 check will pick up the queen here, either by moving the king and then the queen is picked up, or you will capture and then queen captures will be winning. You know, definitely a lot of poison to this queen to d1 move, but Giri doesn't go for the d5 knight. First, he just captures on g5. We have f captures and now c captures on d5. And now Giri is definitely up a piece. We have bishop captures on d5 with check, and now not retreating with the king, but bishop to e6. You have to protect the rook with the queen, so the bishop has to move. We have bishop captures, queen captures on a8, and now queen to h5. And now, as you can see, Giri has two bishops for a rook, and sometimes the rook will prevail against two bishops, but as you can see here, the two bishops are very active, and the rooks are not really developed just yet, and it's very hard to imagine how they will you know, become developed. Bishop to f5, attacking the pawn on d3. We have rook 8 to d1 defending, and now comes rook to e5, just you know, bringing more activity to this rook and also preparing to attack this pawn on g5. We have rook to d2, and then now comes queen to d8. We have h4 with further protection to the g5 pawn, and now bishop to h3, attacking the rook on f1. And here white is already in a pretty bad spot. If you move the rook, let's say rook fd1, then queen to a8 threatens checkmate. You have to further weaken your position, let's say f4 to protect the g2, but then rook e3, rook g3 is coming, and white is just falling apart. So here, after bishop to h3, we have queen to f3. Duda decides to give up the exchange here. We have bishop captures, king captures on f1, and now h6. Giri is now up a full piece, and as long as he can avoid any perpetual checks, he will definitely win this game. We have g captures on h6, bishop captures on h6, and now rook to e2. Well, you can capture here. Giri decides to first go queen e7. We have queen to g4 check, king to f7, and now queen back to f3 check. Giri repeats, king g7. We have queen to g4 check, king to f7, and queen to f3 check. Duda is down a piece, so he of course would definitely enjoy repeating this perpetual, but as Giri is up a piece, he wants to win this game. So queen to f6, offering a queen trade. Queen to b7 check, we have king to g6, and now rook captures on e5. D captures on e5, and now king to e2. And now, okay, the king is somewhat open on g6. Perhaps some ideas of perpetual checks are possible. Queen to f4. We have king back to f1, and now king to h5. The king will be much safer there. We have b4, and now comes queen to c1 check. King to g2, and now king captures on h4. Queen captures on a7. If you can eliminate this pawn as well, then perhaps your huge pawn chain on the queen side can be of some you know, significance. We have queen back to g5 check, king to f1, and now king to h3. And here it's already becoming very dangerous. If this king, for example, takes away all of the squares here, then the checks from the queen will be very deadly. We have queen to h7, but now comes queen to h5. And here, after this queen to h5, Duda had enough, and it was in this position that Jan-Krzysztof Duda resigned the game. Now there's not all that much you can do. Queen d1 is the threat of checkmate, as the king is covering the g2 square, and it's very hard to avoid this. For example, if you try something like king e1, then bishop to d2 check, checks the king and wins the queen on h7. And if you don't do that, if you try something like, let's say, queen e4, so you can meet queen d1 check with blocking queen e1, then you can just start grabbing material. Queen captures on d3, and now if you go to g1, then it will be a forced checkmate. Queen g6 check, you can go back, king to f1, but now d3, you take away this square from the king, so this will be again a threat of checkmate. So you can try queen e4, but no, not queen e4, that loses the queen, but let's say if queen captures on e5, then again queen g2 check, king has to move, and now queen h1 will again be checkmate, as the pawn and bishop are controlling these two squares. And on the other hand, after this let's say queen d1 check, you block, and after this capture you block again with the queen, you don't go king g1, then you can just start grabbing more material. Queen b1 check, queen blocks, queen captures on a2. Let's say you go here, captures, black will just go back, and this pawn will soon be lost. Black is now will be up a pawn, and the bishop and black has too many threats. You can just pretty much exchange queens whenever you want, and it will be over very quickly. So yeah, after this queen h5 move, Duda resigned the game, and another very nice win for Anish Giri with the black pieces. And I believe so far he has 100% win rate with the black pieces this tournament. And here I did prepare the standings after round 6 as promised. So here they are. We have a 4-player tie for first place. Anish Giri, Ding Liren, Magnus Carlsen, and Nepo. Then we have Vishwanathan Anand and Vidit Gujarati also tied with 3.5 points. Then with 3 points, Timur Rajabov. Mamedyarov, after losing his game to Carlsen with 2.5, Samuel Shenklin also with 2.5 out of 6, Richard Rapport and Jan-Krzysztof Duda also with 2.5. Then we have Fedosev and Kramnik with 2 points, not having the greatest tournament so far, and Jordan Van Forest with 2 out of 6. He was able to win one more game, so you know, getting up there. So yeah, and also here's something very, well, we could say enjoyable. A user on Twitter named YoungTiger51 said, I have a strong feeling that Anish Giri is going to win this Tata Steel chess as clear first, where Magnus Carlsen is also a participant. Let's see, fingers crossed. I replied to him that I think he would either like to be clear first or not first at all. Definitely not up for tie breaks like last year, as we already mentioned that last year he lost to Carlsen in tie breaks. And then I mentioned, who knows, he might have been brushing up on his speed. And then Anish Giri replied with this gif of Trump saying wrong. Which you know, obviously he's referring to that to the first part of my sentence that where I said I think he would either like to be clear first or not first at all. So basically Giri is saying that he is ready for anything, that if he will have to go into tie breaks against Carlsen, that he's ready for that, and if he's indeed ready for that, then he well, will be the first one to ever be ready for that, as so far no one has been able to do this. And if he's definitely able to do this, then he's perhaps World Championship challenger material. But yeah, definitely an interesting turn of events, and you know, I'll be very happy to see how this whole thing turns out. So yeah, I would like to thank Aaron Doliana, Peter Simmons, Adam Grice, here Captains, and David Sachs for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. With his contribution, David Sachs joins Ray Fowler and Sean Wilcoxon as top contributor of Agad Martos Chess Challenge chess channel, so congratulations for that. And yeah, as usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon. Have an excellent rest of the Saturday. Hopefully, I will be able to drop a Capablanca video today as well. Thank you all, and I'll see you soon.